Let me tell you something most people don't understand about a man. Silence does not always mean peace. Sometimes silence is a war going on inside his head. When you don't reach out, the first thing that hits a man is pride. He tells himself, I'm good, I'm fine, I don't need to hear from her. But that's just the surface. Underneath that pride is confusion. Because a man may not say it, but he notices absence. He feels distance even when he pretends he doesn't. At first, he thinks it's temporary. He assumes you'll call. He believes you'll text. He waits. And waiting is dangerous for a man because waiting gives his mind time to talk. And a man's mind is not always his best friend. When you don't reach out, the first thing that moves inside a man is his pride. Not the loud kind of pride that boasts or shows off, but the quiet pride that tells him to stand still and act like nothing is happening. He convinces himself he's fine. He tells himself that if you wanted him, you would call. He tells himself that silence doesn't bother him. But pride is a shield, not a feeling, and shields exist because something underneath needs protection. At the beginning, he treats the silence like a test he plans to pass. He assumes it's temporary. He expects your name to light up his phone at any moment. He checks without realizing he's checking. He rereads old messages not because he misses the words, but because he misses how he felt when they were sent. His pride won't let him reach out first, so instead he waits, and waiting gives his thoughts too much room to grow. Inside his mind, pride starts arguing with reality. Reality whispers that something has changed. Pride shouts back that nothing is wrong. He tells himself he's busy, that life is just moving fast, that distance is normal. But deep down, the absence starts to feel personal. A man may not express it, but when a woman stops reaching out, he doesn't just notice the quiet, he feels questioned by it. Silence makes him wonder what he meant to you, even if he never wonders what you meant to him out loud. As time passes, doubt slips in quietly. He begins replaying moments he thought were insignificant. A tone in his voice, a delayed reply, a joke that didn't land right. His pride tells him not to overthink, but overthinking is exactly what happens when emotions have nowhere to go. Men don't always process feelings through conversation. They process them through repetition in their minds. The silence becomes a loop he can't turn off. Even if he appears calm on the outside, his inner dialogue grows louder. He asks questions he would never admit to anyone else. Was I enough? Did I give too little? Did I assume too much? Pride tries to silence these questions, but it can't erase them. It only buries them deeper, where they linger longer. The stronger his pride, the longer he stays quiet, even while his thoughts grow heavier. What hurts most isn't just missing you. It's the feeling of being unnecessary. Men are wired to feel useful, wanted, needed. When you don't reach out, a man doesn't immediately think you stopped caring. He thinks he stopped mattering. That idea hits his ego before it reaches his heart, and his ego doesn't handle that kind of wound well. Instead of admitting pain, he becomes distant, colder, more controlled. Not because he feels nothing, but because feeling too much threatens the image he has of himself. Pride convinces him that reaching out would make him look weak. It tells him that silence is strength and that patience is power. So he stays still even when every instinct inside him wants reassurance. He watches time pass and tells himself that if you wanted him, you'd break the silence. He doesn't realize that you might be thinking the exact same thing. In that quiet space, memory becomes dangerous. He starts remembering the version of you that made him feel seen. The laughter, the comfort, the way things felt easy before they became complicated. Pride tells him not to romanticize the past, but the mind doesn't listen. Silence magnifies memories, and the longer the silence lasts, the more important those memories become. At some point, he reaches a crossroads in his mind. One path leads to reflection. He starts questioning his actions honestly. He considers where he fell short. He imagines how things could have been different. This is where growth happens, but it's uncomfortable and pride resists it. The other path leads to detachment. He tells himself it wasn't that deep. He minimizes the connection to protect his ego. This path feels easier, but it costs him something he may not realize until much later. If he truly cared, the silence teaches him something whether he wants it to or not. It teaches him the value of presence. It shows him how quickly connection can fade when effort disappears. It forces him to confront the gap between what he felt and what he showed. But if pride wins the argument, he will never say any of this out loud. He will carry it quietly, packaged as indifference. A man's silence is often misunderstood. It's not always confidence. Sometimes it's fear dressed up as control, fear of rejection, fear of confirming that he mattered less than he hoped, fear of discovering that the door is already closed. So he waits, pretending not to care, while his mind runs through every possible outcome. When you don't reach out, you take away his illusion of certainty. And for a man, uncertainty is unsettling. It forces him to sit with himself, with no distractions, no validation, no reassurance. Pride can keep him quiet, but it can't keep him at peace. The mind keeps working, searching for meaning in the absence, trying to understand what the silence is really saying. And even if he never reaches out, even if he never admits it, that silence leaves a mark. Not because it broke him, but because it showed him something about himself he can't unsee. When you don't reach out, the first reaction in a man's mind is not emotion, but control. He tells himself he is in control of the situation, of his feelings, of his image. He convinces himself that silence is neutral, that it doesn't mean anything. He goes about his day as usual, speaks to people, laughs when required, stays busy on purpose. On the outside, nothing seems different. On the inside, however, the quiet begins to echo. At first, he assumes the distance has a reason. Maybe you're busy. Maybe life got in the way. He gives the silence the benefit of the doubt because it's easier than accepting that something has shifted. He tells himself not to read into it, yet his mind keeps returning to the same thought. Why hasn't she reached out? That question doesn't come with panic at first. It comes with curiosity. But curiosity doesn't stay innocent for long. As the days stretch on, that curiosity turns into awareness. He starts noticing the absence in small ways. Moments when he would normally share something with you. Thoughts he would usually send your way. Even habits form around connection. And when those habits are broken, the mind reacts before the heart does. He may not miss you consciously yet, but he misses the pattern, and that loss unsettles him. A man's ego quickly steps in to protect him from feeling exposed. Ego tells him not to reach out first. It whispers that if he does, he might confirm what he fears. It convinces him that silence is safer than vulnerability. So he stays quiet, not because he doesn't care, but because caring without control feels dangerous. Ego reframes the situation in his favor, telling him that if you wanted to talk, you would have already made the move. Underneath that ego, insecurity quietly grows. He begins questioning how he was perceived. He replays conversations in his mind, searching for moments where he may have said too much or not enough. Men don't always analyze emotions in real time. They do it afterward, when there's nothing left to do but think. Silence gives him too much time to analyze every detail. At some point, he wonders if you've replaced him. That thought may only last a second, but it leaves a mark. He imagines you laughing with someone else, sharing the parts of yourself that once felt exclusive to him. Even if he pushes the image away, the idea introduces a feeling he doesn't like: competition. And competition makes a man confront his own value. Instead of admitting jealousy or fear, he becomes guarded. He tells himself it doesn't matter. He convinces himself that people come and go. But the more he repeats that story, the more effort it takes to believe it. Silence has a way of stripping away distractions and forcing honesty even when he resists it. He begins to feel something that's difficult for him to name: displacement. It's not heartbreak, not yet. It's the feeling of being moved from the center to the edge without explanation. Men don't talk about this feeling, but it's powerful. It challenges how he sees himself in your life. And when a man feels uncertain about his place, He either fights to reclaim it or convinces himself he never wanted it in the first place. Pride influences which path he takes. If his pride is tied to growth, he reflects. He asks himself if he was present enough, if he listened, if he showed care the way you needed. These thoughts are uncomfortable, and he may resist them, but they plant seeds. Silence, in this case, becomes a mirror, showing him what he ignored when things were loud. If his pride is tied to self-protection, he detaches. He emotionally pulls back to avoid feeling small. He downplays the connection, rewriting the story so that he appears unaffected. This isn't because he feels nothing, it's because feeling would require admitting that the silence hurts. As time goes on, the silence changes meaning. At first, it felt like a pause. Now it feels like a message. And the message, whether true or not, sounds like disinterest. That realization bruises him. Men often measure their worth by the impact they have. When that impact disappears, it creates a quiet wound that doesn't bleed but still aches. He may distract himself with work, friends, or entertainment, but distraction only delays the conversation he's having with himself. Late at night, when there's nothing left to do, the silence returns. He wonders if reaching out now would look desperate. He wonders if it's already too late. Ego and longing pull him in opposite directions, and he stays still because stillness feels safer than rejection. Eventually, he starts to adapt to the absence, not because he's healed, but because humans adjust to pain when it becomes familiar. The silence becomes part of his routine. He tells himself this is how things are now. That acceptance feels calm, but it's not peace, it's resignation. Even if he never contacts you again, even if he acts as though he moved on easily, the silence leaves an imprint on him. It teaches him how quickly connection can fade when effort stops. It reminds him that meaning is fragile, and whether he admits it or not, a part of him will always remember the moment he realized your absence mattered more than he expected. When you don't reach out, the shift inside a man's mind happens quietly, almost invisibly. There is no dramatic reaction at first, no sudden rush of emotion. Instead, there is a subtle pause, a moment where he notices something is missing, but doesn't yet name it. He continues his routine, tells himself everything is normal, and assumes the silence is temporary. Men are good at convincing themselves that nothing has changed, especially when admitting change would require emotional exposure. In the early stages, he gives you the benefit of the doubt. He assumes you are busy, distracted, caught up in life. This assumption protects him from feeling rejected too quickly. But as time passes, the mind starts to connect patterns. One missed message becomes two. One quiet day becomes several. And without realizing it, he starts expecting the silence instead of the connection. That expectation unsettles him, even if he doesn't consciously acknowledge why. A man's mind is deeply tied to identity and position. He measures where he stands in people's lives by attention, consistency, and presence. When you stop reaching out, he begins to question his position without directly asking the question. He doesn't think, she doesn't care anymore. He thinks, where do I fit now? That uncertainty is uncomfortable because men prefer clarity even when the truth hurts. Instead of reaching out for reassurance, his instinct is to retreat inward. Vulnerability feels risky. Reaching out and being ignored would confirm his fear, and confirmation feels worse than uncertainty. So he stays silent and watches. He tells himself that if you care, you will make the move. What he doesn't realize is that silence on both sides can be built from the same fear. As the quiet stretches on, his thoughts begin to wander. He starts replaying conversations, searching for moments that might explain the distance. He focuses on details he once dismissed. A short reply, a delayed response, a change in tone. Men often don't process emotional shifts as they happen. They process them afterward through analysis. Silence becomes the space where that analysis lives. Emotionally, he feels conflicted. Part of him misses the connection, even if he doesn't label it as missing you specifically. He misses being thought of. He misses the sense of relevance. Another part of him resists that feeling because needing someone challenges his sense of independence. This inner conflict creates tension. He may feel irritated without knowing why, restless without understanding the source. At some point, pride enters the picture more forcefully. Pride tells him that reaching out would mean chasing, and chasing would mean admitting that he wants something he might not receive. Pride reframes the silence as mutual. Even if it isn't, he convinces himself that you are both just moving on. This story helps him maintain dignity, but it also deepens the distance. As days turn into weeks, the silence starts to reshape how he remembers the connection. Memory becomes selective. He recalls the good moments more vividly because they contrast with the emptiness of the present. The mind tends to romanticize what is absent. Even small moments take on new weight. A simple conversation feels more meaningful in hindsight than it did at the time. At the same time, he begins to emotionally prepare for loss, even if he hasn't admitted that there is one. This preparation looks like detachment. He tells himself not to expect anything. He lowers his emotional investment to protect himself from disappointment. This doesn't erase the feeling, it dulls it. Dulling feels safer than confronting the possibility that something ended without closure. There is also a quiet sense of powerlessness that emerges. When you don't reach out, he loses the ability to read the situation. He doesn't know if the silence is intentional or accidental. Uncertainty leaves him without a role to play. Men often find comfort in action, and silence removes the option of action without risk. So he stays still, even though stillness frustrates him. Eventually, the silence begins to change him. Not in a dramatic way, but subtly. He becomes more guarded, more cautious about investing emotionally. He learns, consciously or not, that connection can disappear without explanation. That lesson stays with him. It shapes how he approaches future interactions, making him either more careful or more distant. When you don't reach out, a man's mind begins to wrestle with the tension between ego and desire. At first, he convinces himself that the silence doesn't matter. He tells himself he's busy, focused, unbothered. He repeats mantras of independence and self-sufficiency because admitting he cares feels like vulnerability. Men often wear their composure like armor, and silence tests the strength of that armor more than words ever could. The longer the silence lasts, the more the mind starts to wander into uncomfortable territory. In those quiet moments, he begins questioning himself. He retraces conversations, replaying them over and over, searching for something he missed, a clue to what went wrong. It's never the same sequence twice. Sometimes it's a line you said that sounded indifferent. Sometimes it's the timing of a message. Sometimes it's nothing at all. His mind turns small details into stories, trying to explain your absence. Even when logic tells him not to overthink, the heart ignores logic. He becomes trapped in loops of what if and maybe I should have, chasing answers he may never get. Simultaneously, pride keeps him from reaching out. It tells him that if he initiates contact, he will look desperate, needy, or weak. Pride convinces him that dignity matters more than connection, and so he stays silent, even while the desire to hear your voice gnaws at him. That tension between wanting and holding back creates an internal storm. Men rarely admit this storm exists because doing so would feel like losing control. They endure it silently, quietly, as if endurance alone proves strength. As days stretch into weeks, his mind begins to explore the space you've left behind. Absence amplifies your presence in his thoughts. He notices the little things he once took for granted. Your laughter, the way you used to listen, the comfort of your voice. These memories don't arrive all at once. They creep in, sometimes triggered by something ordinary, a song, a place, a shared joke. Each reminder pulls him deeper into reflection, making him wonder whether he could have done something differently to keep the connection alive. There is also a growing sense of urgency that emerges. The silence forces him to confront reality. He can no longer pretend the connection will always be there. The longer the quiet lasts, the more he feels the weight of uncertainty. Men are wired to seek clarity, and uncertainty is uncomfortable. It pushes them into mental and emotional spaces where they are forced to confront their feelings, their mistakes, and their attachments. He starts weighing his options silently, whether to hold his ground, reach out, or let go entirely. The longer the silence persists, the more reflection deepens. He begins to ask himself hard questions. Was I truly present? Did I show enough care? Was my pride too loud, my ego too controlling? These questions are not just about you. They are about him, about how he navigates relationships and values connection. The answers don't come easily, and the process is uncomfortable, even painful. It forces him to confront aspects of himself he might prefer to ignore. Emotionally, he experiences a conflict that is often invisible to the outside world. On one side, there is desire, attachment, and the longing to reconnect. On the other side, there is fear, pride, and the need to protect himself from potential rejection. These conflicting impulses create tension that he must manage internally. Every day, he negotiates between holding back to preserve ego and reaching out to satisfy the heart. That negotiation is exhausting, even if he shows no signs of it outwardly. Eventually, the silence begins to shape his understanding of the relationship and himself. He learns lessons about timing, patience, and the fragility of emotional bonds. If he reaches insight, he grows. He may realize that connection requires effort from both sides, that pride can be a barrier, and that reflection is valuable even in moments of hurt. If he does not reach insight, he may retreat further, allowing ego to dominate, rewriting the story to protect himself from disappointment. Even if he never reaches out, the experience leaves a lasting impression. The silence has taught him something he could not learn while the relationship was active, about vulnerability, about patience, and about the hidden weight of absence. A man's mind does not forget easily. Every quiet moment carries lessons, reflections, and realizations that continue to shape him long after the silence ends. He carries the memory, not always in words, but in understanding, awareness, and the quiet shaping of his heart. When you don't reach out, a man's mind begins to explore scenarios he would never have considered before. At first, he tries to rationalize the silence. He tells himself that life is busy, that people get caught up in responsibilities, that maybe you are tired or distracted. Rationalization is a shield, a way to keep emotions at bay while he maintains the illusion of control. But rationalization only works for so long. Eventually, the absence becomes noticeable in ways he cannot ignore. As the days pass, he starts paying attention to the gaps where your presence used to be. It could be a quiet morning when he expects to hear from you, or an evening when he reaches for his phone out of habit. Every empty space reminds him of what's missing. Even if he doesn't consciously admit it, these moments stir feelings of longing. They awaken a desire for connection he may not have realized he had, and they begin to chip away at the defenses his pride has built. The silence forces him to reflect on the relationship itself. He goes over every word exchanged, every action, every interaction, looking for patterns or reasons for your absence. Men often think in sequences and causes, trying to make sense of situations logically. Yet emotions rarely follow logic. He finds himself caught between wanting answers and fearing them. He wonders if he said something wrong, if he was too distant, or if he failed to show care in ways that mattered to you. These questions play repeatedly in his mind, even when he tries to focus elsewhere. Alongside reflection, a sense of vulnerability grows. Pride has prevented him from reaching out, but his desire for connection does not disappear. It lingers quietly, manifesting as small impulses he suppresses. He may imagine sending a message, dialing a number, or simply asking how you are. Yet ego restrains him. The thought of rejection, of seeming needy, of exposing his inner feelings keeps him frozen. The longer he holds back, the more tension builds inside, creating a storm that is invisible to everyone else, but consumes him internally. Memory becomes a powerful force during this silence. He recalls moments of joy, comfort, and laughter shared with you. These memories are colored by emotion, amplified because of absence. Every shared secret, every late night conversation, every time he felt understood, all of it gains weight. Men often underestimate the power of memory in shaping emotion, but in silence, memories act like a mirror, reflecting both what was and what could have been. The contrast between past closeness and present distance can feel sharp, even painful. Doubt inevitably finds its way into his mind. He questions your feelings, your intentions, your commitment. Did he misinterpret signals? Did he fail to act when it mattered? Did you stop caring, or were you distracted? These doubts are not fleeting. They echo quietly, looping through his thoughts, challenging him to confront realities he may not want to face. At the same time, he resists seeking clarity because doing so would require vulnerability, a willingness to admit that the silence affects him more than he wants to show. As time stretches further, he begins to imagine outcomes. He weighs possibilities, projecting what might happen if he continues to wait versus if he chooses to act. Silence becomes both a teacher and a tormentor, showing him truths he might not have acknowledged while the connection was active. He learns patience, the consequences of pride, and the complexity of human emotions. Every imagined scenario carries lessons about himself, about relationships, and about the delicate balance between attachment and independence. Eventually, the silence molds his emotional landscape. He may emerge more cautious, more reflective, or more understanding of the nuances of connection. The experience teaches him about timing, the significance of effort, and the hidden weight of absence. Even if he never reaches out, the lessons linger, shaping the way he views relationships, vulnerability, and his own emotional capacity. He carries these insights quietly, a subtle transformation that occurs in the mind and heart, unseen but deeply felt. When you don't reach out, a man's ego immediately starts to take control. He tells himself he's fine, that he doesn't need to hear from you, that life goes on, and that silence is nothing more than circumstance. Pride is his first defense, a shield to prevent him from admitting that the absence affects him. Men often use ego as a barrier between themselves and discomfort, and in this case, silence becomes the perfect test of that barrier. The longer the quiet continues, the more his mind begins to probe the space left behind, questioning everything he once took for granted. At first, he assumes the silence is temporary. He tells himself, you must be busy or distracted, that there's a logical reason for the gap. He holds on to this assumption because accepting that the distance may be intentional would challenge his sense of worth. Men are wired to measure value through attention and connection, and when those disappear, it unsettles them more than they often admit. So he waits, clinging to hope while convincing himself he is unaffected. As days turn into a week, subtle anxiety begins to creep in. He notices the patterns that have changed, the messages that no longer arrive, the calls that go unanswered, the absence of shared moments he once relied on. Even small routines, like expecting a good morning text or a casual check-in, now highlight the void. His mind starts replaying past interactions, searching for the moment things may have shifted, looking for mistakes, misunderstandings, or signals he may have missed. These reflections are not immediate. They build slowly, layer by layer, until they consume his thoughts in a way that pride cannot fully suppress. Simultaneously, his heart begins to weigh in, quietly but persistently. Desire and attachment linger even as ego asserts control. He may imagine reaching out, composing a message, or picking up the phone, but the fear of looking vulnerable or desperate holds him back. Men struggle with this inner conflict because societal norms often dictate that they should appear strong and unaffected, even when silence has stirred deep longing. The tension between ego and heart becomes a constant undercurrent, shaping his thoughts and influencing his behavior in ways he doesn't openly acknowledge. Memory also plays a powerful role. He recalls moments when connection felt effortless, when laughter was shared freely, when the bond between you felt strong. These recollections do not arrive in order, they surface unexpectedly, triggered by a song, a scent, or a fleeting thought. Each memory carries weight because absence has magnified its importance. The contrast between what was and what is now becomes more pronounced, amplifying both longing and regret. In silence, memories transform into lessons, showing him the value of the connection he may have taken for granted. Doubt inevitably settles in alongside reflection. He questions your feelings, his own actions, and the state of the relationship. Did he fail to act in time? Did he misread your signals? Was there something he could have done differently to maintain closeness? These questions loop endlessly in his mind, often without resolution. The struggle is not simply about missing you. It is about understanding where he stands, how he is perceived, and what his role is in the absence he now experiences. Over time, the silence shapes his understanding of himself. He learns about patience, resilience, and the consequences of pride. If he allows reflection to guide him, he grows, gaining insight into both his own emotional patterns and the dynamics of connection. If he resists and lets ego dominate, he may harden, creating barriers to intimacy in the future. Either way, silence leaves an indelible mark, teaching him lessons that presence often cannot. Even if he never reaches out, the absence carries a lasting effect. He understands, consciously or not, that connection is fragile and must be nurtured. He carries the quiet inside him as both a reminder and a teacher, a lesson in value, effort, and the delicate balance between desire and restraint. The silence molds him, shaping his mind and heart in ways subtle, profound, and unforgettable, leaving impressions that endure far longer than the moments themselves.